Deep in the mist-soaked woods of Queensland, they found a boy. Standing at the edge of a cliff, rain falling eyes wide as if he'd seen a ghost or a miracle. No one knew why Leo, the quiet orphan child, wandered out into the night. Through thick forest, nearly 5 kilometers, in a dream. But what chilled them to the bone were the hoofprints pressed deep into the ground around him, damp perfect, forming a silent circle of protection. No horse, no one else, only a breath of warm air hanging in the cold, and a worn bridle clenched tightly in the boy's hand. That wouldn't be the last time those invisible prints appeared, because sometimes the one who leads the lost back home doesn't need to be seen. If you love touching deep and special stories like this, hit the subscribe button now so you don't miss out on the next heart-touching movies. The action isn't over, it's just beginning. 2. Dawn did not rise in a blaze of color. In this part of rural Queensland, it arrived quietly, like someone entering a room where grief slept. The sun didn't burn its way across the horizon. It merely leaked into the sky, pale, bruised the color of silence. A rooster crowed once, then nothing. A boy stood alone beside a broken-down stable, its roof half caved in its hinges, rusting into the timber. His name was Leo, and he was 10 years old. He didn't speak much, not because he couldn't, but because the world around him didn't seem to understand the kind of words he needed. He held a carved wooden horse, its tail long gone, its legs chipped from time. The paint had peeled, exposing the soft grain beneath, but Leo stroked it like it was still breathing. The house behind him was older than it looked. White paint peeled off in strips. The porch sagged like an exhausted shoulder. From the front steps, his grandfather watched him, bony hands clutching a chipped enamel mug, eyes hidden beneath the brim of a sun-stained hat. "You're up early," the old man said. Leo didn't answer. The old man took a sip. The mug clinked against his teeth. Then he turned back into the house. Leo remained staring at the stable, as if expecting it to speak. Inside, breakfast was nothing special. Cold toast, thick butter, the ticking of a clock that had long since stopped keeping time. The old man reached into a drawer and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. He handed it to Leo without ceremony. It was a leather bridle worn thin by years of use. The brass rings had turned green at the edges, and the bit was missing altogether. Still, Leo ran his fingers along the stitching, as if reading a language only he understood. "When you don't know where you are," his grandfather said softly, "hold that. Just hold it." Leo looked up. The old man's voice tightened. "She used it. On the white one." He didn't say her name. He never did. Leo didn't need him to. He knew he was talking about his mother. That evening, the light fell differently, longer, thinner, like it was being pulled backward by something just beyond the edge of sight. Leo didn't eat dinner. He sat near the window instead, his wooden horse in one hand, the leather bridle in the other. Outside, the wind dragged itself across the fields, whistling low and uneven. Then, a breath, long, wet, horse-like. Leo sat up. He turned slowly toward the window. The curtain fluttered slightly, though the window was closed. He stood. The floor creaked beneath him as he crossed to the glass and pressed his forehead against it. Darkness, but not empty darkness. There was a weight to it. A pressure. Like something was waiting just outside. Not menacing, not dangerous, just present. Another sound. Clop, clop. Distant, but clear. Like hooves on hardened earth. Leo didn't breathe. Not for a long time. Then he whispered, "Mom?" No answer, but something moved. He didn't sleep much that night. He lay curled beneath the blanket, eyes wide, listening. The breathing came again, not every second, but enough. Enough for him to believe. He clutched the wooden horse tighter to his chest, and when the tears came, quiet, embarrassed, inevitable, he felt something else. Not just the breath, not just the sounds, but touch, a weightless brush on his shoulder, like someone kneeling beside him. Like someone who knew exactly how it felt to cry without making a sound. Leo didn't flinch. He didn't speak. He just let the tears fall, and whatever it was stayed. Morning arrived, like a wound being wrapped. Soft light bled through the window. Leo rose with the sun and padded outside in bare feet, moving silently toward the stable. The earth was still damp from a night fog. He paused, bent down, and there in the soft dirt near the trough, a hoofprint. Large, fresh, too deep to be imagined. He reached toward it slowly, unsure whether it would vanish beneath his hand. It didn't. The shape held. 4 clean curves pressed into the soil with weight, with intention. He looked around. No tracks leading away, no sign of intrusion, just one hoofprint. Alone. But Leo didn't feel alone. Later in the kitchen, he placed the wooden horse on the windowsill. The bridle hung from the back of his chair. He didn't mention what he saw. Neither did his grandfather. But something in the old man's silence had shifted. It wasn't just distance now. It was avoidance. Leo watched him eat in slow mechanical bites. He waited. And finally he asked, "Did you ever hear her after?" The old man didn't look up. "I don't hear things that aren't real." "But what if?" The old man slammed his fork down. "Enough." Leo fell silent. The wooden horse stared out the window. The bridle swung slowly behind him, like a pendulum stuck in mourning. That evening, as Leo stood again by the stable, the world seemed to hold its breath with him. He didn't need to see her. He didn't need her to speak. Just the sound of breath, the comfort of weightless presence, the echo of hooves, and in that in-between, just before the sky turned completely black, Leo whispered into the dusk, "I'm not scared. Not of ghosts. Not of silence. Not anymore." And as if in reply, a low, quiet snort. From somewhere near the trough, the sound came again. Not the kind of sound that wakes a person up. It was quieter than that. Quieter but deeper. It didn't knock on the ears. It reached through the ribs. Clop, a pause, clop, clop, breathing, slow, heavy, too close. Leo's eyes snapped open. He didn't scream, didn't sit up. He just lay still, every part of him listening. The night outside the window was black and absolute. But the sound wasn't coming from outside. It was inside. He could feel it. Something moved just slightly in the air near his neck. A breath. Warm, damp. And then, gone. Leo slowly turned his head. The room looked the same. Chair desk, the bridle still hanging from the wall, nothing out of place. But something had been there. He sat up and touched his shoulder. It tingled, as if someone had pressed against it with gentleness and grief. At breakfast, the house was quiet except for the ticking of the old wall clock, which always ran 5 minutes slow, as if time here refused to catch up with the rest of the world. His grandfather scraped butter onto burnt toast, chewing with the slow deliberation of someone who no longer cared about taste. Leo pushed his food around the plate, then finally said, "I heard it again last night." The toast stopped halfway to the old man's mouth. Leo waited. No response. He tried again. I think it was breathing. Inside, like a horse. Still silence. And then, without looking up, the old man muttered, "If a horse dies wrong on this land, it don't stay gone." Leo's fork paused. His grandfather wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and stood. "Some say they come back to find what was taken. Others say they come back to lead the lost back home." He walked to the sink. "That's all it is. Don't think too much." Leo stared at the space where the toast had been. He thought about the breath on his shoulder. The sound of hooves in a room with floorboards that hadn't creaked in years. At school, Leo didn't speak. Not much different from usual. The kids didn't notice him, or if they did, they didn't care. But Tara noticed. It was a small thing at first. An art project meant to represent movement. Most kids painted running dogs whined in trees, soccer balls mid-kick. Leo's page was covered in gray smears. A shape? Kind of. Long legs, a headless body. The outline of a horse, maybe. But not a full one. Not grounded. It looked like something half lost in fog, being pulled backward out of the world. Tara crouched beside his table. "Is it running away?" she asked softly. Leo looked up, startled. "No," he said. A pause. "It's looking for something." Tara's eyes narrowed slightly. "What's it looking for?" Leo didn't answer. He just stared at the page. Later, she found more drawings, stashed in the back of his notebook. All horses. All faceless, blurred, unfinished. All painted in charcoal and mud tones. One of them had something shocking, a boy riding it. The boy had no mouth. That evening, back at the house, Leo sat on the porch with the bridle in his lap. He didn't swing it, didn't play with it. He just held it like his grandfather told him to. The sky darkened slow. Distant thunder whispered from behind the hills. And then again, clop, clop. This time not just near. This time from inside the stable. Leo stood, slowly, walked barefoot across the grass. The door to the stable was cracked open. Not wide. Just enough. He stepped inside. No lights. Just the dim gray glow of cloud-covered moonlight seeping through the gaps in the wood. He walked toward the stall in the back. The one that used to belong to her, his mother's horse. The white one. Straw lay clean and flat, as if something had been lying there. Recently, the bridle in his hands grew warm. Or maybe his hands were just cold. He crouched, listened. Nothing, but the air trembled faintly, like a held breath. He whispered into the dark, "I know you're here." The next day, Tara requested a parent meeting. No one came. She knew Leo lived with his grandfather. She knew he wouldn't come either. So she walked to the house after school. The gate creaked. The wind carried the faint smell of horses and old wood. She knocked. Leo answered. "Hi," she said gently. He didn't smile, but he didn't close the door either. "I was just wondering if I could talk to your grandfather." "He's not here," Leo said. Tara hesitated. "May I come in?" He stepped aside. Inside, the house smelled like rust and pine. A wall lined with old show ribbons. Most dated more than 20 years ago. All faded. She spotted the bridle on a hook beside the door, and the drawings, scattered on the coffee table, some with water stains as if someone had cried over them. "You like horses?" she asked. Leo shrugged. "I don't ride." Tara paused. "You draw the same one every time," she said. "Why?" Leo looked down. "Because she keeps coming back." Tara blinked. Leo nodded. "She breathes like Mum did, when she was tired." That night, Tara wrote in her journal, "There's something following this child. Not danger, not quite trauma. It's more like memory that learned how to walk on 4 legs." She didn't know if she believed in ghosts, but she believed in Leo. And she knew grief could make anything feel real, especially when it was. The morning began with an unnatural hush. Leo opened the door to a stillness that felt too perfect, like the land was holding its breath. A thick fog clung low to the earth, white and weightless, hiding the boundaries between grass and sky. He blinked hard, trying to push sleep from his eyes, then stepped barefoot onto the damp soil. The moment his foot touched the ground, he stopped. There in the soft earth beside the porch was a hoofprint. Clear, crisp, deep. Leo stared, his breath caught. He knelt down, fingers hovering just above the indentation. The ground was wet, but the center of the print was dry, as if it had been pressed in after the mist had settled. Too perfect to be old, too deep to be a dream. His fingers touched the edge. It was real, and it wasn't alone. He followed the print slowly, like walking a trail of invisible thread. They circled the house one careful step after another, then curved toward the old paddock passing the well. The weathered fence and the hay shed no one had entered in years, and that's where he saw it. The hay was torn apart, not just scattered by wind, not chewed by birds or rats. Dug through piles pulled away, as if by a muzzle revealing the softer straw inside. Leo crouched again, brushing his hand through the chaos. Long white strands clung to the hay, coarse, thick, unmistakably mane hair. His fingers trembled. Something had been eating here, something big, something that left no sound, only signs. Back in the house, the air was heavy with heat from the wood stove. Leo's grandfather sat at the table, sharpening a blade slowly, the rhythm steady and precise. Leo stood in the doorway, holding a clump of hair in one hand, dirt on his knees. "I saw them," he said quietly. The old man didn't look up. Hoofprints around the house, at the haystack. The blade paused, steel against stone. Leo stepped closer. Something was there. It ate. Still no answer. Then, just as Leo moved to speak again, his grandfather rose so suddenly that his chair scraped harshly against the floorboards. "What did you touch?" he snapped. Leo flinched. "What?" "The stable, the shed, the tack wall. Did you move anything?" Leo's mouth opened, but nothing came out. His grandfather was already moving fast for a man his age. He pushed open the back door, boots thudding hard against the wooden steps, and marched straight toward the barn. Leo followed at a distance, heart pounding. Inside the barn, dust floated like soft ash in the air. Shafts of light broke through the slats, slicing gold into the gloom. Then he heard it, the sharp intake of breath from his grandfather. Leo stepped inside. The saddle had been moved. It sat in the center of the tack bench, straps uncoiled, stirrups dangling. Not where they'd left it. Not where it had rested untouched for years beneath the tarp. The old man turned, his face darkened, not by anger, but by something worse. Fear. His voice trembled. "You did this." Leo shook his head. "No, I swear. Don't lie to me. I didn't." His grandfather moved, suddenly grabbing the saddle by the horn and slamming it down onto the bench. Dust exploded upward. A silence followed that hurt more than shouting. Don't bring this back, the old man growled. Leo's lip quivered. You don't know what you're playing with, boy. You don't remember what happened in this barn. Leo stared at him. She died here, the old man whispered. Right out there, in the dirt. You think it's romantic, a ghost story? His voice cracked. It's not. It's blood. It's weight. It's my fault. He turned and walked out, leaving Leo alone in the dust and the dark. That night, Leo lay awake in bed, the air thick with silence. The moonlight on the floor looked like it was waiting for someone to step into it. He clutched the bridle to his chest. It still smelled like sun and saddle soap. Like her. He closed his eyes, and the dream came. He was standing in fog. The world was colorless, hushed, unmoving. The ground beneath him pulsed with each heartbeat. Then from the mist a shape. A woman, her hair long untied. Her hands outstretched, her eyes full of light. His mother. She didn't speak, but Leo felt the words all the same. He moved toward her feet, barely touching the ground, and behind her a horse. Enormous. White. Glowing softly from within. Not blinding, but warm, like the memory of sunlight through skin. Its eyes met his. Not wild, not tame, just there. Holding something that had been lost in Leo for a long time. The horse stepped forward, each movement soundless. It bowed its head and knelt. Leo reached out. His mother smiled. Then the world dissolved in light. He woke gasping. Sweat slicked his back. The sheets twisted around his legs. He sat up. Outside, the wind whispered through the eaves. The room was still. But on the floor, another hoofprint, muddy, fresh. And beside it, his wooden horse sitting upright, facing the window. Leo hadn't moved it. He hadn't touched it in days. His fingers reached for it, trembling. Later that morning, he stood again at the stable door. The wind blew dry grass across his feet. He walked slowly to the tack bench. The saddle was exactly where it had been the night before on the bench, uncoiled. No one had touched it, except someone had. On the seat of the saddle, the dust had been disturbed, just a small patch. But it was shaped like a handprint. That afternoon, his grandfather sat in the shade, sharpening another blade. Leo walked up to him, quiet, careful. He said nothing. Just sat on the porch step with the wooden horse in his lap. After a long pause, the old man spoke. Your mother didn't want the fame. Leo looked up. She just wanted to ride. Just wanted to feel the wind. Another pause. I told her to take the jump anyway. Said the crowd would love it. Said she was ready. His voice cracked. She wasn't. Leo's eyes filled. His grandfather kept sharpening. I haven't touched that saddle in 10 years, he said. It should have rotted by now. Leo nodded. She's not angry, he whispered. The old man didn't reply, but he stopped sharpening, and for a long time, they sat in silence. The kind that doesn't need words, the kind that holds guilt and forgiveness in the same breath. That night, Leo left the barn door open, just a crack. He placed fresh hay in the corner stall, a bucket of water beside it, and on the wooden ledge near the door, the wooden horse, watching. As he walked back toward the house, the wind shifted again, and from behind him in the straw, clop, clop, slow, steady, not imagined, not haunting, but real. And Leo smiled. The light was falling in shafts again. Thin beams like memory cutting through dust. Leo stood in the attic, surrounded by silence. He hadn't meant to be up here. He was chasing something. Not physically. Something had been tugging at him all morning. Not a sound, not even a presence, just a pull. Like the air itself had whispered upstairs. Boxes, crates, old trunks with rusted hinges and broken straps. A saddle pad stiff from age slumped in the corner like something trying to forget what it once held. Leo walked slowly between them. Then he saw it, a leather case, old but clean, untouched by spiderwebs, like someone had been here recently and placed it deliberately where only he would find it. He lifted the lid, and his world changed. Photographs, dozens of them, glossy, grainy, worn at the edges from too much handling, and in nearly every one her. His mother, laughing, mid-air, arms spread wide as she leapt between galloping horses, wind in her hair, muscles tight yet effortless, always smiling, sometimes focused, never afraid. In one she stood with his grandfather in the center of a dusty arena. Both of them in performance outfits, hands clasped, bowing to a cheering crowd. A banner behind them read, "The Fearless Riders, one night only." In another, she was alone, mounted on a white stallion. No bridle, no saddle. Her legs folded beneath her as the horse rose on its hind legs. The moment captured looked impossible, mythic. like something out of a legend. Leo's eyes moved slowly across the images. His breath grew shallow. She'd been more than he ever imagined. Not just a rider, not just his mother, but a mythic force. And she'd lived here on this very land. And then, the final photo. Tucked behind a yellowed contract. It was grainier than the rest, motion blurred, but unmistakable. She was falling, arms flailing mid-air, horse mid-leap. Her body pitched too far forward. The crowd in the background was already rising. Someone's hand reached toward her, blurred by motion and panic. The ground beneath her was just inches away. Leo stopped breathing. Later that day, the air shifted again. His grandfather sat on the porch, carving a handle for a rusted garden tool. Leo stepped outside and stood silently in front of him. The box of photographs was in his arms. The old man looked up, their eyes locked, and something cracked. He nodded once, almost imperceptibly. Then he said in a voice pulled from beneath the weight of years, she wasn't supposed to do it that night. Leo sat down on the step. She hadn't practiced that jump in months. Said the horse was off. Said her back was tight. Said the crowd didn't need it. He exhaled hard. But the promoter said we'd lose the contract. Leo looked over. You agreed? I told her it was just one last time. His voice broke. She smiled at me. Said, okay, Dad, one last time. A long silence. She died trying to save my name. He stared out toward the stable. I've never forgiven myself. That night the moon hung lower than usual. Leo didn't sleep. He sat in the barn brushing dust from the photo of his mother atop the white horse. The air smelled of hay and old leather, and something softer, lavender maybe. A scent he couldn't place but knew belonged to her. He looked around the barn. The beams above were cracked but held firm. The stall doors still swung on rusted hinges. But the place wasn't dead. It was waiting. He stood, moved to the back wall, and began cleaning, one board at a time, quiet, methodical, reverent. The next morning, Tara drove up the dirt path in her old ute, a box of paint supplies in the back, and worry clouding her face. She hadn't heard from Leo in 2 days. The last time they spoke, he had mentioned a dream. Said something about wings and hooves and light. She knocked, no answer. She called, no sound. Then she heard it, a brushstroke rhythm, soft but steady, from the direction of the barn. She followed it and stopped at the entrance. The place had changed. Dust was gone. Tools aligned. Stalls swept clean. Ropes coiled. Buckets rinsed and filled. Sunlight pierced through slats in perfect angles, turning the inside into something almost sacred. And there, at the center of it all, Leo brushing the stall door with linseed oil, barefoot calm. He looked up as if expecting her. Hi, he said simply. Tara stepped inside. Her breath caught in her throat. This is incredible, Leo nodded. It didn't feel right leaving it like it was. She walked slowly, fingers tracing the wood. It doesn't feel empty anymore, she said. It feels like someone still lives here, Leo finished. She turned toward him. Who? Leo looked at the stall. My mum. They sat together on a hay bale, the afternoon sun creeping in like a secret. Leo showed her the photographs. Tara's eyes widened at each one. She was incredible, she whispered. She flew, Leo said. Tara paused on the final photo, the one of the fall. Her hands stilled. She did that for someone else, Leo said. Not for herself. To protect the contract. To protect the name. He looked down, and no one protected her. Tara closed the box gently. She shouldn't be a secret. Leo's voice cracked. She was a writer, a real one, the best. She didn't deserve to disappear. Tara placed her hand on his shoulder. Then let's bring her back. That evening, the barn glowed. Leo lit candles along the stalls, a makeshift altar of sorts. He placed the photo of his mother on a hook near the saddle she used to ride. It still smelled faintly of sweat and wind and something sharp like thunder. He stood back, took it all in, and for the first time, he whispered her name aloud. Amelia. The barn seemed to inhale. A shift in air, a pressure. He didn't move, didn't blink. A breeze passed over his shoulder, a breath not his own. He smiled. At dinner, his grandfather sat opposite him, silent as usual. But something was different. Leo reached into his pocket, placed the oldest photo on the table, the one of Amelia standing proud on the white stallion. The old man looked at it for a long time. Then he reached out with trembling fingers and turned it slightly. She trained that horse from nothing, he said softly. He was wild. Kicked through fences, bit trainers. Leo listened, but not with her. With her, he bowed. Another pause. I never asked why, never really saw her. Leo's voice was soft. She saw you. The old man nodded. Then whispered I wasn't strong enough to hold her. You weren't supposed to, Leo said. You were supposed to let her ride. And for a moment the silence held them both like a saddle holds a rider not to restrain, but to guide. Later that night, Leo returned to the barn. He placed a small apple in the stall, then stood back, hands behind his back, bare feet rooted to the earth. The air around him thickened again, and this time he heard her. Not just breath, not just hooves, but a voice, soft, warm, only for him. I never really left love. And then hoofbeats, not near, not far, just enough to know she was still riding, somewhere just beyond the veil. And for the first time in a long time, Leo wasn't the one who cried. The barn did. The beams creaked. The dust trembled. The roof sighed. And the photo of Amelia fluttered slightly on the wall. It started with a letter. Cream-colored envelope. Clean typeface. Official seal from the Shire Council of North Queensland. Leo found it lying face down on the kitchen table, half covered by a dirty dish towel. He didn't touch it, but he could feel what it carried. Weight. He'd felt it before in dreams. In the hallway where the air turned cold, in the pause between his grandfather's steps when he passed the barn without looking. Now it was on paper, typed, formal, real. Later, he sat on the porch steps, the wooden horse in his hands running his thumb along the chipped tail. His grandfather stood in the doorway, envelope in one hand, other hand wrapped around a cup of lukewarm tea. They want to buy the land, he said. Flat, quiet. Leo didn't look up. They say they'll build an eco-lodge, put in trails, maybe even a riding school, for tourists. He took a long breath. The kind you take when you already know the answer, but you ask the question anyway, just in case someone surprises you. They'll tear the barn down. Silence. Then he added, as if it excused everything. There's no one left riding horses around here anyway. Leo looked at the horizon, no words. But inside him, something flinched. That night, the house was quiet again. But it wasn't peaceful. The silence felt like a bruise darkening beneath the surface, waiting to be touched. Leo lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The moonlight spilled across the floor like a confession. He rose without sound, tiptoed through the hallway, pushed the screen door open just enough to slip outside. The air was sharp, clean, scented with eucalyptus and smoke from a faraway burn. He walked to the barn, opened it, and began his ritual. He filled the manger with fresh hay, even though there was no horse. He filled the trough with clean water, even though no lips would touch it. He folded an old horse blanket over the stall wall. Then he stood back and waited. No sound, no hooves, no breath. Just a breeze that lifted the dust into tiny spirals. But Leo believed, and in that belief he was louder than any protest. In-town meetings began. Tara was there. She sat near the back, listening as council members laid out their vision tourism dollars. Economic rejuvenation, celebrating heritage with sustainability. It all sounded so clean. Too clean. Until the map came out. Parcel 12B, Leo's land. She stood. What about the barn? The presenter, a man with thick glasses and city-polished shoes, smiled. It's not structurally sound. We'll be building new facilities. Modern, accessible. Is anyone asking the landowners what they want? He shrugged. They've been invited to submit feedback. But have they been heard? He adjusted his microphone. We have a public engagement process, yes. But no one said her name. No one said Amelia. No one said anything about legacy. Just profit. Just progress. Tara drove straight to the property afterward. The gate was open. The sun was falling fast. She found Leo outside the barn, spreading straw carefully, with a broken rake. No music, no humming. Just that meditative rhythm that grief often takes when it has no one to talk to. He looked up when she approached. You've been feeding her, Tara said softly. Leo nodded. She's still here, he said. Tara looked at the neat rows of hay, the polished trough. This is a protest, she realized, isn't it? Leo tilted his head. You're feeding a ghost to keep the real ones away. A long silence. Then he said, she's not the only ghost here. Inside the house, his grandfather watched from the window. He saw Tara's hand on Leo's shoulder. Saw the two of them walking into the barn. He turned away, walked to the table. The envelope was still there, unopened. He picked it up, sat, pulled out the letter, read it slowly. His lips moved, but he didn't speak. Then he took out a pen, held it above the signature line. But his hand didn't move. Not yet. Not tonight. That evening, Leo added something new to the stall. A photo. Of his mother, Amelia, midair, hair flying arms wide like wings, a blur of motion and power and light. He pinned it to the wooden beam above the stall with an old nail. Then he lit a small candle and stood in silence. Tara stood beside him. What would she say, she asked. Leo didn't hesitate. She'd say, "Don't build over bones that haven't stopped breathing." Tara nodded. "I'll write to the council," she said. "But they won't listen to me alone." Leo looked at the candlelight flickering across the photo. "She's listening," he said, "and maybe that's enough." The next morning, the wind changed. Not just a breeze, a shift. The kind of wind that moves dust and thought and decision. The kind of wind that wakes you from your sleep and forces you to ask, "What have I left behind?" His grandfather stood in the yard staring at the barn. In his hand, the letter, folded, crumpled. He watched Leo walk out with a new bundle of hay, barefoot hair still messy from sleep. Watched him place it gently in the trough, like a priest offering something sacred. Then something broke. The old man dropped the letter in the dirt and walked toward his grandson. Leo didn't hear him at first, not until the footsteps were close. He turned. His grandfather stood there, empty hands, full eyes. "I used to laugh at the idea of ghosts," he said. "Thought they were just how the weak made sense of pain." He paused. "But you're not weak, and neither is she." Leo swallowed hard. "I didn't sign it," the old man added. Leo's eyes widened. "I don't know how to fight a council, or a bulldozer. But I know how to stand still. A beat. And I know how to say no." They stood side by side. 2 generations, 2 wounds, 2 believers. And as the wind curled through the stable, a low whinny echoed from somewhere not far. But nowhere anyone could point to. Just felt, right between the ribs. That evening, Tara arrived again. This time she wasn't alone. She brought Sam, the chubby, sharp-tongued cattle hand who'd once mocked Leo's silence, and Emma, the baker's daughter, who'd heard about Amelia and said she remembered watching her ride once when she was 5. They stood in the barn quietly, and they looked at the photo. They touched the leather saddle. They smelled the hay. And none of them said the word ghost, but all of them believed. Because sometimes belief doesn't come from proof. It comes from presence. The council called again 2 days later. Left a message. No response. They sent another letter, this time by courier. Leo's grandfather opened it, laughed, then set it on fire in the sink. The barn stayed. The hay was fed. The trough refilled. The candle burned. And the hoofprints, they appeared again. In the morning, in the frost. Soft, deep, unmistakable. Leo pressed his palm beside one. Same size, same shape, different weight, but same purpose. And in that moment, for the first time, he didn't feel like a boy feeding a ghost. He felt like a rider waiting for a mount who already knew the way. The wind came first. Not the gentle kind that rustles leaves. This wind spoke through rusted hinges, cracked boards, dry grass bending like breath. It was the kind of wind that carried old names, that shook the dust off the memories nobody wanted to keep. Leo didn't wake when it passed through the house. He didn't feel the sheet slide from his shoulders or the floorboards sigh beneath his steps. His eyes remained closed, but he moved. His bare feet padded across cold timber, then down the front steps one at a time, as if guided. His hands hung loosely at his sides. One of them gripped something, the old leather bridle. It had hung untouched on the hook near the door for years. Now it swung with each step like a metronome counting down. The moon watched from behind the clouds. Leo crossed the yard, didn't stumble, didn't shiver. The barn door creaked open like it knew him, and he walked straight in. Inside, the light was dreamlike blue and gray and full of mist. Leo moved toward the stall. His fingers brushed along the wooden beam, then down to the saddle. Empty, but somehow waiting. He placed the bridle gently over it, paused. Then without hesitation, he swung his leg over the saddle and sat. There was no horse, no flesh beneath him, no heat, no movement, just air. And yet he adjusted like a rider, back straight, heels down, hands positioned as if holding invisible reins. Then a breath, low, deep, surrounding him, the sound of something alive. And then movement. The camera shifts. We see from her eyes now, the invisible horse. Her breathing heavy, steady, powerful. The barn doors blow open. Hooves hit ground silent, then loud pounding into the dirt like heartbeats. Leo leans forward as if he's done this all his life. But he's never ridden before. Not once. And somehow he doesn't fall. The wind follows them. They race through paddocks and dry creek beds through wild bushland. Trees flicker past like ghosts, and yet everything is calm. Leo's eyes remain closed. His hands firm on something no one else can see. They move as one. His weight and her stride. His breath and hers. Time distorts. Distance disappears. The land opens before them like a path carved into myth. And somewhere in the darkness, Amelia, his mother, rides with them. Morning. A thin mist curls low across the hills. It is Sam, the cattleman's son, who sees something strange as he's driving past on his 4-wheeler. At first he thinks it's just a bundle of blankets at the edge of the overlook. But as he slows down, the shape comes into focus. A boy, Leo, sitting cross-legged, eyes closed, barefoot, bridle clutched in his lap. At the edge of a cliff, a 5-meter drop into hard rock and silence. Sam calls out, panicked. Leo opens his eyes, but he doesn't flinch. Within the hour, the hill is alive. Tara arrives first, then the local police, then a few farmers from nearby. They don't find blood. They don't find injuries. They find hoofprints, dozens of them, surrounding Leo like a circle, protective, unbroken. But no horse, no trail leading in or out. Just wet indentations in the dirt, sharp, clean, undeniable. Leo doesn't speak much. He just whispers one sentence as Tara wraps a blanket around his shoulders. She brought me back. At home, his grandfather waits on the porch. When the car pulls up and Leo steps out, the old man stands but doesn't move. Tara gently guides Leo forward. The boy walks across the yard, without a limp, without fear. His grandfather's lips part. He looks at the bridle in Leo's hands, still damp from dew, still warm somehow. "Where did you go?" the old man asks, voice tight. Leo looks up at him, and for the first time in days, he speaks clearly. "She let me ride." The old man's jaw works like he's trying to chew the truth, like it's too large to swallow. He repeats. Leo nods. "The one who watches." He says nothing else. He doesn't need to. The air between them holds the rest. That night, the house is too quiet. The old man paces. At one point, he stands in front of the barn, staring at it like it's about to speak. Then he goes inside, stands before the saddle, places one hand on it. For a long moment, he closes his eyes. And when he opens them again, there's a single tear on his cheek. "I believe you," he whispers into the empty stall. Then he turns and walks out. Later, Leo returns alone. He doesn't light a candle this time. He doesn't bring hay. He just stands at the entrance and waits. The barn breathes around him. Soft groans in the wood, the shuffle of something unseen. And then, the faint sound of hoofbeats just outside the frame. Cut to black. Fade in. A photograph new taped beside the old ones. In it, Leo stands beside the empty stall, smiling faintly. Below his feet, a perfect hoofprint in the dirt. It wasn't it anymore. Leo had stopped saying that weeks ago. He never told anyone the exact moment the shift happened. But it lived somewhere between the night she carried him 5 kilometers through darkness and the moment he opened his eyes at the edge of the cliff and still felt her breath on his shoulder. He didn't need proof. He didn't want to convince. He simply began referring to the presence, the hooves, the breath, the warmth as she. And everyone around him noticed. "She's not a thing," Leo told Tara one afternoon while brushing the stall floor. "She's someone." Tara, holding a cup of tea, didn't laugh. She didn't question. She only nodded and said, "Then let's treat her like someone." But not everyone accepted so quietly. Sam, the cattle hand, who once called Leo the ghost kid, wasn't done being skeptical. He had watched the town shift, watched grown men stop on the road and point to nothing in the field, claiming they'd heard hooves. Watched Tara, the level-headed art teacher, start using words like presence and energy. It irritated him, until the cliff. Until he saw Leo in a place no boy should have ever reached alone. No scratches, no fear, just a bridle and a smile. That's when Sam got curious. He showed up one morning with an old trail cam. "I want to see her," he said flatly, standing at the barn entrance. The real her. Leo was brushing out the empty stall. He didn't look up. "She doesn't like being chased." Sam leaned on the doorway. "I'm not chasing. I'm asking." Leo paused. "You don't believe me." Sam scratched his head. "Not yet." Leo stood, handed Sam a bucket of water. "She'll show you when she's ready." That night, Sam mounted the camera near the rafters of the barn just above the saddle rack. No lights. No sound. Motion triggered. Infrared. Just to catch something. The next day, the footage was still and lifeless. The day after that, same. Then came night 3. The first 10 minutes of footage were nothing but shadows. Dust, swirling insects zipping past the lens. But then movement. The saddle shifted, slightly. Too subtle to be wind. Too deliberate to be rodent. Then again it moved. One side dipped. Then the other, like weight was being applied. Gently, cautiously. Then the bridle lifted from the peg. Hovered. No visible hands. No strings. Just leather moving through the air as if guided by memory. The camera began to fog. Not from malfunction, but as if the temperature in the barn dropped all at once. Condensation bloomed on the lens. Then a sound. Breath. Long, low, deep, almost maternal. And then the hay at the center of the stall compressed as if something had laid down. Settled. Sighed. And in the silence that followed, 4 hoofprints pressed into the ground, one after another, in real time. Then, nothing. Sam watched the footage at least a dozen times. Alone. Then in his truck. Then outside the barn with Tara and Leo. Nobody spoke for a long time. Finally, Sam exhaled through his nose, leaned against the wall and said, "Well, that settles that." Tara gave him a sideways glance. "You believe now?" "I believe I don't know a damn thing," he replied. "And maybe that's what makes it real." Leo smiled. "She only shows herself when you're quiet." Sam chuckled. "Not my specialty." Word got out. Sam didn't try to stop it. In fact, he leaned into it, brought his friends over, showed the footage, dared them to scoff. Some laughed, some stayed silent, a few cried. Meanwhile, Leo grew quieter, not withdrawn, just focused. He began placing things in the barn each night. Not offerings, gifts. A red ribbon his mother once wore, an apple polished until it shone, a letter folded tight, never opened by anyone else. He didn't talk to her aloud, but his hands spoke, and she listened. The camera caught more. A shadow one night, four-legged, tall, almost skeletal in its lightness. The shape of a horse, but made of dust and time. Another night, the sound of hooves, 5 clear steps, then silence. Once the saddle was seen rocking gently as if someone had mounted and dismounted. But the most haunting clip came on the 6th night. The camera turned itself off. For 27 minutes. No error, no battery failure, just blank. And when the footage resumed, a hoofprint directly below the camera lens, pressed into the wood of the rafter beam itself. 10 feet off the ground. Tara submitted the video to a local documentary crew. They declined, called it a beautifully staged hoax. She didn't argue. She just smiled and said, "You're not supposed to see it." At school, Leo became a subject of whispers, but not mocking ones anymore. Instead, "That's the boy with the ghost horse. That's Amelia's son. They say he rides her at night, through the mist." Some were curious. Some were scared. Some, for reasons they didn't understand, felt safe just standing near him. One night, Leo sat in the barn brushing the saddle. It had begun to shine again. Not from oil, but from being used. From touch. The leather grew warm under his hand. He whispered, "I missed you." A breeze passed through the stall. No doors opened. The flame of the candle beside him danced. And somewhere far, but not far enough to feel distant, a horse exhaled. His grandfather watched him from the porch, sipping his usual cup of weak tea. He saw the way Leo moved, now confident, gentle, grounded in something he didn't yet understand. He thought of Amelia, how she used to walk barefoot through the paddock before a storm, how the horses always stepped aside when she approached as if making way for a storm of a different kind. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in decades, he whispered her name, Amelia. And in the barn, Leo smiled. He'd heard it. Later that week, Sam returned with a new piece of gear. A thermal camera. "I want to try something," he said. Leo nodded. "She won't run. I'm counting on it." That night, they set it up on a tripod facing the stall. No lights, no bait. Leo sat beside it, silent, fingers folded. Hours passed. Then a flicker on the screen. A shape. Bright, white-hot. 4 legs. A mane. Head bowed. Breathing. "Her," Sam whispered, but Leo lifted a finger. "Don't speak." They watched as she circled the stall once, then twice. Her form flickered but held. Then she stopped in front of the camera and bowed her head. The screen blurred, the lens fogged, and the thermal feed shut off. When it returned, she was gone. But the heat remained, in the shape of a saddle, in the shape of a rider. Sam wiped his eyes. "I think I finally saw her." Leo smiled faintly. "No, Sam. She finally saw you." The journal was thinner than Leo remembered. He found it wedged between 2 photo albums on the top shelf of his mother's old dresser. The cover had once been pink, but the sun had drained it into a ghost of its original color. A single sticker peeled at the edge, a galloping white horse, the glitter long since faded. He carried it to the barn like a fragile artifact. He waited until nightfall to open it. The candlelight flickered across the pages. Her handwriting was small and sharp, like she was always racing time to say something important. There were entries about shows, horses' injuries. Notes about how to keep a stallion from chewing his reins. Diagrams of dressage patterns. And then toward the back, the ink softened. The sentences turned more personal. More maternal. One entry stopped him cold. "If you ever feel the kind of cold that doesn't come from the wind, if it lives under your ribs behind your eyes, call her name. The one with no saddle, the one no one sees but always hears. She'll know the way home." Leo read the lines again and again, the words washing through him like warm water, poured over aching hands. She had known, long before she left. His mother had known he'd be lost one day, and she'd already sent help. The next morning, Leo didn't speak during breakfast. He simply pushed the journal across the table to his grandfather. The old man didn't open it, not right away. His hands trembled. He held it like it might burn him. Then slowly he turned the cover. The candlelight from the window hit the pages just right, and he saw her handwriting again for the first time in years. He closed his eyes. Later that day, Tara arrived unannounced. She found the old man sitting on the porch, the journal open on his lap. She sat beside him. Neither of them spoke for a long time. The birds sang somewhere beyond the trees. A breeze teased the old wind chime hanging from the eaves. Finally, the old man said, "I thought if I stayed quiet long enough, the world would forget." Tara turned toward him. "But you didn't," he nodded. "Every time I passed that barn, I felt her riding beside me. Not in memory, in motion, in muscle." He closed the journal, fingers resting on the cover. "She was better than I ever was. Stronger, wilder. And I let them break her. For a contract." His voice shook. "I thought staying silent was penance. That if I punished myself, I was protecting her legacy." He looked at Tara. "But she doesn't need protection. She needed to be seen." Tara didn't reply. Instead, she reached over and gently placed her hand over his. That was enough. That night, Leo waited until the sky turned to silver. Until the first stars blinked open like shy eyes in a wide, dark face. He lit 2 lanterns and walked with his grandfather across the yard. The barn doors were already open, not because they'd left them that way, but because someone had opened them first. Inside, everything smelled of memory hay saddle oil, the hint of lavender from an old sachet tucked into the rafters. Leo didn't speak. He simply walked to the center stall, placed a hand on the saddle that no longer gathered dust, and waited. His grandfather stepped beside him. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then together they reached out. Their palms touched leather. But it wasn't just that. They felt it. A pulse. Slow, warm, alive. The saddle, still solid, throbbed gently beneath their hands, not vibrating, beating. Leo's eyes filled with tears. So did his grandfather's. And still they didn't speak, because there was nothing left to explain. They stood there for minutes, or maybe hours, hands resting on what the world would call empty space. But they knew better. She was there. A few nights later, something changed. Leo was walking across the yard when he saw his grandfather already in the barn. The man who hadn't set foot inside for over a decade was standing beside the stall, whispering something Leo couldn't hear. Then he did something unexpected. He reached up and took the saddle down. Leo rushed over, not to stop him, but to understand. The old man placed the saddle on the ground. Then he knelt. His hand brushed the straw, and there, clear as day, hoofprints, fresh, deep, steady, a perfect circle around him. He looked up at Leo. "She never stopped riding," he said. Leo smiled. "She was waiting for us to walk beside her again." Tara arrived the next morning with painting supplies. She stood in the doorway of the barn, breathing in its new life. Leo greeted her with a nod, then handed her the photo they'd printed from Sam's thermal camera. The heat signature of the invisible horse, white-hot, defined, majestic, circling the stall. She held it to her chest, and then asked, "Can I paint her?" Leo nodded. She'd like that. Days passed. The barn became a place people came to feel. Not to see, not to ask, but to feel. Parents brought children who didn't speak. Teenagers who'd lost parents. Widows, widowers. A girl who hadn't left her house in months stepped inside and whispered, "It smells like her," before bursting into tears. No one questioned the absence of a horse, because something was there, in the warmth of the walls, in the silence that felt like embrace, in the way the dust never settled on the saddle again. One night, Leo dreamed again, but this time he wasn't lost in fog. He was riding, the wind in his face, the stars above like lanterns guiding him, and beneath him her. Strong, proud, fast, but he wasn't a child anymore. He was taller. His back was straighter. He wasn't holding on for dear life. He was guiding, and she was letting him. Ahead, a figure waited, a woman with hair like wildfire and a gaze full of home. His mother. She didn't wave this time. She just watched, as if finally ready to let him go forward. Not without her, but beyond her. Leo woke up smiling. He walked into the barn and found the saddle had been turned, facing the door, ready to ride. Later that morning, he and his grandfather stood side by side again. They didn't need to talk about what came next, because whatever came, she would be there, guiding, like she always had, unseen, but never ever absent. The morning mist clung to the ground like something alive. It slid between the blades of grass, coiled around the weather-worn posts of the old barn, and curled into the hoofprints that still remained deep, unmoving, as if they had been carved by time itself. And in front of the largest print, just near the barn's entrance, he knelt. The old man, the trainer, the father. With stiff hands and breath caught in his throat, he lowered himself onto one knee and bowed his head not in shame, but in something older, something heavier. Grief turned into reverence. He reached forward and touched the outline of the print. There was no wind, no sound, but his lips trembled as he spoke. I was wrong. I let them turn you into a product, a poster, a paycheck. His voice cracked. You were never mine to control. You were wild. And I clipped your wings just so I could pretend I was still flying. He closed his eyes. I'm sorry, Amelia. He waited. And though there was no answer in words, something shifted. The mist moved slightly, wrapping around him like arms that didn't need form to be felt. From the house, Leo watched. He didn't approach. He didn't interrupt. He understood. This was not his moment. Later that day, Tara arrived in a rusted pickup. The bed of the truck was packed with folding stools, blank canvases, and boxes of paint. Behind her came a wave of children. Some were loud and laughing. Others were quiet, holding brushes like swords or shields. A few clutched wrinkled pieces of paper, their drawings already started. They gathered near the barn, not inside, just close enough to feel whatever she left behind. Tara stood before them, paint on her jeans hair in a messy knot, and said, Today we paint what we feel, not what we see. Some of the kids looked confused. One girl raised her hand. Like ghosts, Tara smiled. More like guardians. Leo stood behind her, silent, watching. He didn't need to lead. He had already become the story. An hour later, the field was covered in color. Horse heads emerging from storm clouds. Riders cloaked in mist. A boy, recognizably Leo, clutching a bridle made of starlight. One child drew a white mare standing over a sleeping boy, her eyes glowing but kind. Tara walked through them slowly, her hands shaking slightly with awe. None of the children had been told the full story, and yet they knew. They had drawn her in 100 different ways, on 100 different pages, but she was there. That night, Sam stood in front of the town hall. The small community room buzzed with uneasy energy locals, in weathered coats, city developers in pressed shirts, and council members whose faces didn't hide their fatigue. On the table lay plans for a new ecotourism resort, a paved path right through the old horse paddocks. Sam cleared his throat, held up a photo not of thermal footage or hoofprints, but of a child's painting, a white horse mouth open in a breath standing in mist, a single boy holding out a hand. This land isn't haunted, Sam said. It's remembered. Murmurs. He held up a second photo. This barn doesn't just hold tools. It holds memory, pain, love. Generations of unspoken things that don't fit into your project budget. A pause. You want to pave over it for profit? You'll erase the only sanctuary some of these kids have ever known. He turned, pointed to the back of the room where Leo stood silently beside Tara. Arms, folded eyes, unwavering. You look at that boy and tell him his grief doesn't matter. That his mother's life is just old debris. Silence. Even the developers looked unsure now. Sam stepped back. The room held its breath. Outside, under the orange haze of a street lamp, Tara placed a hand on Leo's shoulder. You okay? He nodded, then looked up at the stars. Do you think she knows? Tara followed his gaze. I think she is the stars now. He smiled, then turned toward the parking lot where something shifted. Not visible, not loud, but the mist there parted, just slightly, and he swore he saw a tail flick once, then vanish. 3 days later, the town voted. The proposal was rejected. Unanimously, the developers didn't fight. Not after they visited the barn themselves. Not after standing in the stall and finding their hands warm without explanation. Not after looking through the guest book Tara had placed by the door where people left messages like, Thank you for helping my daughter sleep again. I saw her eyes. I'll never forget. You brought my memory back and gave it peace. Leo's grandfather began teaching again. Not professionally, just in the yard. Sometimes to Leo. Sometimes to neighborhood kids. Sometimes to no one, just standing in the barn, reins in hand, moving through motions of a past that no longer haunted him, but held him up. One afternoon, Leo placed a new saddle blanket across the rail. It was stitched with white thread in the shape of a horse running beneath stars. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The next morning, the blanket was gone from the rail, but neatly folded in the stall. One evening, Leo and Tara stood in the barn, looking at the children's murals, now mounted on the walls. He turned to her. She's not here as much anymore. Tara nodded. Maybe because you're not alone anymore. He looked down. She was never meant to stay. No, Tara agreed. She was meant to bring you through. Later that night, a storm rolled across the hills. Thunder low like the drumbeat of hooves. Leo stood at the threshold of the barn, watching the rain. He held the old rope his grandfather once gave him. The mist danced at the edge of the field, and for a moment he saw it. Not a shape, not a ghost, but motion, a presence galloping fast through the rain. Not toward him, but past him. Onward, free. And Leo, without hesitation, whispered, "Golden morning." Queensland lay still as if time itself had paused to breathe with the earth. A newly carved wooden sign stood in the open field, where the old horse barn once crumbled, the hollow hoof sanctuary for the unheard, for the unseen, for the lost. Beneath it, etched in childlike handwriting, she showed me the way back. Leo, now a teenager, 15, walked along the white fence holding an old worn bridle. Not to ride, not to control, but as a bridge between two worlds, between the living and the unseen. Behind him the children, the orphans, the silent ones, the ones who'd been left behind, the ones who once looked in the mirror and saw nothing. One of them, Ruby, a quiet girl with dark hair, hadn't spoken since her mother's death. When she first arrived, she only drew spirals, circles of confusion. Her eyes were dull, as if the light had been taken from her. But today, she stood beside Leo next to an empty saddle, no rider, no horse. She looked around then, with a motion so small it could shatter your breath, placed her hand on the saddle. No one told her to. No one showed her how. She just knew. Tara, now serving as the sanctuary's creative counselor, stood a distance away, camera in hand. But she didn't click. Some moments shouldn't be captured. Leo slowly stepped toward Ruby. Feel that he asked, his voice barely above the breeze. Ruby didn't answer. But a smile, fragile flickering, appeared on her lips. Her first smile in months. Not because she saw something, but because she was seen. The sanctuary housed no real horses. Just saddles placed in fields, carved wooden statues fading into wind. And every afternoon, the kids rode their imaginary horses. But no one called it imaginary anymore. They rode memories. No one believed souls that had been left behind, hoofprints no one saw but everyone felt. Leo's grandfather, now slower, sat on the porch in an old chair. His eyes still looked far, as if someone he loved was galloping home through the sky. When Leo handed him a letter from a single mother whose child spoke for the first time after riding the invisible horse, he didn't speak. He just took Leo's hand and squeezed. Sam, the once cowhand, now sanctuary site manager, helped expand the place into a hybrid emotional ecological education center. He joked with visiting guests, "We don't have horses, but we have something more loyal." On a special day, Leo's mother's birthday, he placed a wooden white horse statue in the field where she'd fallen long ago. The statue wasn't perfect. Rough cuts, deep grooves, imperfect lines. But its eyes faced upward. Leo didn't carve them downcast, not in sorrow, because she never bowed her head. That night, the children gathered around the statue. Leo retold the story his grandfather once whispered. "If a horse dies unjustly on this land, it will return to guide the lost." A child asked, "But if I'm the lost one, who guides me?" Leo paused, looked around, and replied, "Maybe someday, it'll be you guiding someone else." Final scene, a soft pink dawn. Leo, taller now, stronger, his eyes calm, stood alone in the wet grass, holding the same old bridle. He closed his eyes, didn't speak, just listened. Wind brushed by. Dew shimmered underfoot. The camera slowly pulled back. On the earth below him, hoofprints began to appear, steady and real, circling him in silence. There was no shadow, no shape, only the warm rhythm of invisible footsteps on cold ground. Epilogue, a community transformed. This film was never just about a ghost horse. It was a metaphor for the words, never said the trauma, never named the pain, buried so deep it became silence. From a lost boy, Leo became a healer through the friend no one else could see. The invisible rider was never just a horse. It was every soul that had been forgotten, every child that had been silenced, every pain that had no name until someone believed it existed. And in this life, when grief no longer knows the way out, sometimes all we need is not someone telling us to move on, but a hand, gentle, unseen, to rest on our shoulder and show us the way home.